Chapter 7 is going to look at the process of cellular respiration and the prior step to that, glycolysis, in order to get the glucose ready for cellular respiration. All cells need energy. So when we looked at plants and other photosynthesizing organisms, we saw that for the most part they got their energy from the sun, although they can also do this cellular respiration process if they need to, because they also have mitochondria. So the energy is stored in chemical bonds, glucose, right? Because in photosynthesis, this is what we're building is this glucose. These are complementary processes. So what we see here is essentially if we take photosynthesis, this equation that you should hopefully know by now, and you flipped it backwards, you would get cellular respiration with just a couple of changes. So in cellular respiration, we're taking glucose, that's sugar, and we're using oxygen, and we're going to produce energy. Okay, so we're not getting sun energy, we're not making that, but we're making ATP here. Remember that energy currency that our body will use for all of the different processes that it needs. Then we're producing water and carbon dioxide, which are the reactants for photosynthesis. And then also typically some heat, because if you remember about entropy, not all reactions are 100% efficient. So some of that energy is just lost. And so here we see this illustration here, which for photosynthesis, we had our carbon dioxide, water, sunlight, light-dependent reactions. We made our ATP, NADPH. That was used in the Calvin cycle, or light-independent reactions, to produce glucose and oxygen. Now with cellular respiration, we're going to use that glucose and oxygen, and we're going to make some water, carbon dioxide, and then that ATP energy. So they're complementary processes. Okay. Sorry about that. We see our plant cells here. Within plant cells, we have our chloroplast. Within those cells, that's got those thylakoids. We do our light-dependent, light-independent reactions, all this photosynthesis. Okay. Plant cells also have mitochondria, which is where cellular respiration is going to take place. So within plants, we can take that glucose and that oxygen produced from the chloroplast, run it through the mitochondria, and then produce the exact opposite. We're producing the carbon dioxide and water, and we've got ATP from this process. Okay, so plants have this energy available if they need it, and they can process it through their mitochondria. Now within humans, we don't have chloroplasts. We've just got mitochondria. So we need to eat things in order to get those sugars to break down and use the mitochondria to produce that ATP energy. Okay. So these processes, glycolysis is happening within the cytoplasm of the cell, that fluid matrix within the cell. And then the rest of the processes, the cellular respiration, is happening within the mitochondria. Okay. So why do we need oxygen? Why do we breathe and why do we eat food? Okay. Is it because we'll suffocate and starve? Well, no, not technically, right? Those things are true. But on the cellular level, there's a whole nother reason for that. And that's what we'll look at here. The reason that we need glucose, the reason that we need to eat, is to produce ATP. Because if we didn't have that ATP, we couldn't move things across membranes, right? Anything that required active transport would not be possible. There are a lot of chemical reactions that couldn't occur. A lot of things like proteins couldn't be created without the help of ATP. So looking at oxygen, why do we need that? Is because as we see in cellular respiration, we're going to have a lot of leftover electrons. And that oxygen is used to pick up those electrons so that those electrons aren't doing damage to our mitochondria and our cell as a whole. All right, so cellular respiration, we take sugars and we make ATP in 3 steps. We've got our glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. Remember when I said we'd see this again in cell respiration? Well, these processes are going to be very similar to one another. Okay? And so we see this whole thing again. So we take the glucose and oxygen, we go through glycolysis first, and then within cellular respiration, we've got the Krebs cycle, and then the electron transport chain. So with glycolysis, this is happening in the cytoplasm, and this is just the start. We're taking that glucose and we're breaking it down. Now, depending on the type of organism, we could do fermentation, which happens in the cytoplasm. This does not require oxygen. So things that live in an anaerobic environment, an environment without oxygen, will do fermentation. Things like yeast do this. Okay. For things that have access to oxygen and have mitochondria, we're going to do the rest of cellular respiration. It's going to happen within that mitochondria. So glycolysis, again, happens in the cytoplasm. Okay. It begins by taking a glucose, and we have to do a little bit of investment here. Okay. So we take 2 ATP to help us break apart this glucose molecule. Okay. So we're putting a little bit into it. But as we break that molecule, we can take that energy and we're able to make 4 ATP out of this. We've got these electron carriers, this NADH. So we're picking up some electrons and protons here. And then we're producing water through this process as well. So water is one of the products of cellular respiration, this whole process. And we see that some of it is made here. And so we end up getting these 2 pyruvate molecules. So when we talk about glycolysis, we say that we have a net gain of 2 ATP because we made 4, but we used 2 in the beginning. So overall, we're getting a total of positive 2 ATP. So this prep step is just the breaking of glucose into pyruvate. Okay? And this releases electrons and protons, which the NAD picks up. The other thing that's going to happen here is that we are taking this pyruvate molecule. Carbon dioxide is being pulled out of this. So we're breaking it down a little bit, and we're picking it up with this enzyme, this coenzyme A. So this pyruvate is turned into acetyl-CoA, and then that's going to go into the next part of this process. Okay, so the pyruvate, right, formed from the glucose in the cytoplasm, that's going to move into the mitochondria where it's picked up by coenzyme A, so we get acetyl-CoA. Then that's going to go into the Krebs cycle. Okay, and we see overall in the Krebs cycle, we're producing 6 carbon dioxide, 2 ATP, 8 NADH, and 2 FADH2. So this is all from these 2 pyruvate. This is still a single glucose molecule. This is what we're getting out of it. And so what we see here is you don't need to know all of these steps and all of these processes for this course, but we're taking this pyruvate, modifying a little bit, getting this acetyl-CoA, and then what we're doing is we're just making a lot of modifications to this molecule. Okay, we're making it into this citrate. We pull off a carbon dioxide. Okay, take an electron and a proton, and we've got NADH. Strip off another carbon dioxide, form another NADH. We get a little bit of ATP right here, and then we've got our FADH2 and our NADH, and now we have this oxaloacetate, which is going to bond with this acetyl-CoA to make another citrate. And so this is why it's a cycle, because this molecule is being reused every time it goes through. And so we go through this twice with each glucose because it forms 2 pyruvate molecules. Okay. Now we jump into the electron transport chain. This is happening in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. What goes in, we're taking all these NADH, these FADH2s, and we're producing most of our ATP here. Okay, so we're running short on time for this video, so I'll pick up right here in the next one.